For the first time in My Hero Academia, a character has outright returned from the grave. But unlike a lot of times when that happens in manga or anime, you don't see the fandom up in arms about it or screaming about it and saying, oh, this is really cheap, this character's death was completely ruined. So let's talk about why that's the case and how this was actually done very well, because not only does it feel earned to have Twice back in My Hero Academia, but it also feels like it comes at very great consequence to the heroes. And if this video is to be believed, I don't think Twice is going anywhere because he's sort of become immortal at this point. So how did we get here in this situation? Well, Twice died in a battle against Hawks in the most recent arc, the arc that's being animated right now in the anime. You actually probably could have watched that happen a couple episodes ago. Toga then at some point gets some of Twice's blood, which isn't that hard to believe because she was in the area when it happened, and then Toga abandons any hope of the heroes understanding her and uses Twice's blood. And this happens as a result of a short battle that happens between Toga and Ochako that we'll probably see coming up in the next couple episodes. But Toga more or less has had this question about whether or not she thinks Deku or Ochako can actually be the ones who actually understand her more than anyone has before, and understand that she really wants to live a normal life, but she just doesn't have that option, and she thinks those two present the best opportunity of people who could maybe give her that option that aren't villains, right? Because the villains clearly accept Toga for who she is and have tried to make a way for her in life, which is more than we could say anyone in her life normally has ever done. So now we get to the present day in this arc, and again, Toga has used Twice's blood, clearly off screen, because the last time that we saw Toga, she had only pulled out Twice's blood. But I do think by the time that we catch back up to the Ochako and Toga area, we are going to step back a little bit in time and see how that whole situation came about. I don't think we're just going to cut over to a swarm of Twice clones there without seeing how that situation happened in the first place. Now, when Toga uses Twice's blood, here's what logically has to happen to get an outcome where Twice clones can come out of that portal at the end of chapter 374. Toga has to consume Twice's blood, and then by doing so she uses her quirk to transform into him. In My Villain Academia, Toga reached a quirk awakening that allows her to push this ability even further, allowing her to use the quirks of the people that she transforms into, reliant on how much affection she has for that person. The more emotion Toga feels towards the person that she's transforming into, the more likely it is that she'll be able to use their quirk. And after forming a friendship with Twice throughout the series, it makes sense that his quirk is one of the ones that she'd be able to call upon. Once Toga transforms into Jin, she as Jin then makes a clone of Twice as we remember him, or pretty much the last time that Twice saw himself in the mirror, because we know that double updates when Twice sees someone again, so that the double is always the most recent version of the person. But since the last version of Twice that Jin was able to see before he died was likely himself in the mirror at some point before his battle with Hawks, Toga is successfully able to spawn a fresh Twice clone who can then spawn in two more of themselves, and it just continues to spread from there, without Toga needing to use Twice's quirk anymore, since it's effectively on autopilot now. Now, the thing that makes this situation so dangerous is that the only way to defeat this attack is just to kill every Twice clone before they swell out of control and just take over the whole country like we've been warned Twice is capable of in the past, just with the sheer volumes of clones that he can generate. But consider the situation that Twice is being brought out in. All of the heroes are very tired, with some of the biggest AoE dealers being either completely gassed or just in completely different areas. And now it seems like potentially Twice clones are being distributed out to other areas, when those Twice clones can then go on to create armies at every location on their own. It's a tough situation for the heroes to be in, not even to talk about the fact that Twice can create clones of the other League members and the high-end Nomu, but there's something else that makes this far worse for the heroes. Something that makes this threat honestly almost impossible to deal with. You see, Bubai Jin was killed. He's a man that's supposed to be dead, but now surely the reality that he's no longer living should get to these clones somehow, whether by Hawks mentioning it to them or by them learning it through some other means. It makes me wonder whether Twice will fall for the trap of succumbing to his original weakness of being too afraid to act or create more clones because they all know none of them is the real one, or will things very much echo My Villain Academia, where by learning the truth of whether or not Twice is a clone, Twice is only emboldened? Because I see a scenario where even if the Twice clones learn that they're just echoes of a dead man, this summoning by Toga specifically allows them a new chance at life if they can just get these pesky heroes out of the way. And as Twices, it offers them the ability to save Toga and all of their friends in the league to finally make up for all of the mistakes that Twice has made in the past. And you know what? It's actually possible, honestly, for Twice to get this sort of outcome. It's very unlikely, but it is theoretically possible here, because Twice is a character who it's easy to see as unlucky in many aspects, but his quirk might be the luckiest draw for any character in the series, because despite the fact that our original Twice isn't here any longer, his death enabled Toga to more or less create a situation where Twice can no longer be killed. Considering that in My Villain Academia, we learn that Twice clones can be used for blood transfusions, meaning that they aren't just sludge and actually have entire circulatory and intact bodily systems, that suggests that now with a horde of Twice clones likely filling up the area that Toga is in an attempt to hide herself from Ochako and the others to make herself unreachable after being denied, Toga now has an infinite supply of Twice blood, meaning that if she's careful or if her needles are sharp enough, she should just be able to restock large amounts of Twice's blood to bring him back practically whenever she pleases to give her friend another chance at life. In this way, Himiko Toga has ultimately made herself incredibly dangerous once again, just by trying to live alongside the only people who can accept her for who she is. At the end of the day, it's very sad to me that the only friends Toga really seems to have all have 1 foot or more in the grave. We've seen that despite what he says, Dabi cares for Toga, which we can draw from his act of burning her old home down that symbolized much of her trauma. But we know that he's not very long for this world, right? The argument can be made that Shigaraki isn't long for this world, and depending on how Spinner acts, he might not make it very long either, considering if he acts against All For One in any way, he'd probably explode very much like Lady Nagan did. And the only consistent friend that Toga can call upon is a dead man that she has to resummon from the grave using his blood, because she doesn't realize that Ochako finally understands her but can't reach her as Toga hides among the walking corpses that she's filled the battlefield with. Like All For One says, the death of a sad, sad man gave the girl who grieved him the one tool she needed to bring ruin to it all. And in that process, we somehow ended up with what I believe is an effectively immortal representation of Twice, because unless Toga is taken out or decides to stop collecting his blood, Twice is back, and he might not be going anywhere.